Saturday afternoon, the Hatters go to the Vitality Stadium, or Dean Court if you're of a certain age, for Bournemouth versus Luton Town, a game that I think we're all looking at as one that we can win. I'll ask James Cunliffe of the Lutonian that and much more in the preview podcast of Bournemouth away. James, we ready to get going?
Let's do it.
Here's the intro.
Can you believe it? We are Premier League! Yes!
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got these massive souls.
We're Luton people, and that's what we care about.
Welcome along to another episode of the Luton Town Supporters Trust podcast. This time it's a preview of Bournemouth away, Saturday 3 o'clock, not on UK TV. So if you don't have a ticket for the game, you'll need the radio or, dare I say it, dodgy streams to watch the game. Joining me to preview it is the Lutonian journalist James Cunliffe. I'm your host Kev, as always. Let's get cracking. James, the big teams are out of the way for a little while, as we highlighted in the Man City review. We shouldn't make the mistake of thinking this is going to be an easy game, but it is an easier game than the last two that we've had. I'll ask that question I always ask when these big teams don't come along. Is it a must-win game?
It's starting to feel like it, isn't it? I think you've got to get something from them. They're starting to pull away. I mean, it's only 3 wins, but it shows you what that can do. But they are the form team, them and Liverpool, the form team of the Premier League at this current moment in time. They've only Liverpool got more points than them since they won their first game, and they didn't get much from the opening 9. So the pick up in form is concerning, considering we were looking after this block of games against the big boys to then maybe try and get something to them. But on the other hand, it's also something you can look at and say, well, that's what Luton can do. The option is there. The possibilities are there. If you can string a couple of results together and then shoot up the table. I mean, it's easier said than done, but you've got to start somewhere.
You do, yeah. Lots of kind of historical sort of references really with this fixture. Obviously, we were both minus points 15 years ago in that League 2 season. They only got 17. Obviously, we got 30. They stayed up. We didn't. And, you know, their path was a quicker trajectory than ours in terms of the fact that they didn't have to go to the depths of despair before they recovered. But in more recent times, we met them in the Championship. When Scott Parker was their manager. Obviously, we'll always remember the scenes at Kenilworth Road, and we'll probably mention them again when Bournemouth come to Kenilworth Road later in the season. But actually, we gave as good as we got at, I keep on thinking it's Dean Court. I'll give it its due. I'm not a sponsors fan, but yeah, I'll give it its due. Vitality Stadium. At least Dean Court had the fence behind the goal, didn't it? At least this one's got 4 stands now, so fair enough. But yeah, it's a fixture that, unlike sort of Sunday that we played Man City for the first time in 25 years, this is a more sort of regular fixture.
Yeah, it's one that's we're quite well used to. And, you know, apart from this recent run of results that they've been on, we were one we were targeting for points. It shows you what can happen in a matter of games, really, because if you'd have asked me the question you first asked me, is this is a must-win, you know, 4 games ago, 5 games ago, a month ago, I'd have said, yeah, absolutely. Now it's a sort of definitely got to pick something up. You know, we're looking at home performances that have been of such a high calibre and got nothing from them. And, you know, a lot's going to rely on the home form, but you still got to go away and nick a few points here and there. And so, considering the run they're on, the confident mood they're in, it's going to be a really tricky game. And so, you know, I'd be well happy with a point.
Yeah, the fixtures do level out. We've highlighted that a couple of times in recent times, but I think it's fair to say that the 4 that come after this one probably look a little easier, and that we'd rather have this fixture come along last month, but it hasn't done. It's come along now, and like you say, those 2 home performances, they do give encouragement that we can certainly give this lot of game and pick something up just because they've been winning games. They've probably been winning games largely as underdogs. That's not the case when they beat Sheffield United, but does a win against Sheffield United really hold too much merit? I'll save my reservations until Boxing Day, of course, albeit it's a different Sheffield United now under this supposed superstar manager, Chris Wilder, who isn't a superstar manager. But looking a little bit deeper into Bournemouth's form, they've only won 2 home games all season. One of those was against Burnley. Again, you can hold all sorts of question marks as to the form of a win over Burnley at the moment. And even then, they needed a 40-yard goal and a goalkeeper flapping thin air to win that game. Their other home win this season is against Newcastle, who seem to go AWOL when they leave St James's Park, because apart from the 8-0 win at Sheffield United, they haven't won an away game. They were so bad at Bournemouth that night that even their fans, bearing in mind how good things are for Newcastle a minute, their fans turned on Kieran Trippier for that night. That's how bad they were. So those 2 home wins have got plenty of question marks over them. Now, if you're a Bournemouth persuasion, you're taking that combined with the away wins that have gone with it. But if you're looking at it as a neutral, and certainly as a Luton fan, you're like, well, you can pick those home wins apart. And when you're looking for crumbs of comfort, that's what you got to do, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that's probably a result of how they are set up to play, or what they have done so far and what they've done so well, is that they're quite happy not to have so much of the ball. I think they're in the low 40% possession for possession and play on the counter. And so if you're looking at that they've only got 2 wins at home where you're supposed to have more of the impetus, but they go away, particularly to Old Trafford, and you've got to give them their dues. They absolutely battered Manchester United 3-0. Should have been a lot more. You've got to give them their dues, but they played that way because they were away. Maybe the shackles are off, the pressure's all on Manchester United, and so are they going to have that when they play at home against Luton? Because Luton are another team that are quite happy not to have the ball, so they're going to probably have to have more of it. And maybe that works in Luton's favour in the same way it's worked in Bournemouth's favour when they've been on the road. I think the possibilities are there.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that they like to play on the counter-attack, and I only caught bits of that Bournemouth-Newcastle game because it was the day that we were at Old Trafford, and, the signal down on the M6 for my sort of iPad Wi-Fi was touch and go at the best of times. So I was fleeting in and out of the game, but the bits that I did see, they were counter-attacking at will, weren't they, Bournemouth, against Newcastle, who were obviously pressing forward. We ain't doing that. Mm-mm. That's not how Luton do it on the road. Luton look to contain on the road and hit them on the counter-attack. And I would imagine there'll be space to do that because at some point, they're in a good run of form. Everyone of a Bournemouth persuasion is going to go to the game expecting them to beat Luton, as they would have done if they weren't in good form, but certainly now that they are in good form. So it'll be interesting to see how they cope with that. The one thing I will say about Bournemouth is fair play to them, because so many teams in this league will have booted Andoni Iraola out by now. He was the favourite for the sack race for much of the season. Obviously, Paul Heckingbottom won that, but they seem to be improving under him. He had a really, really good record in Spain. I think it was at Real Sociedad, where I know a couple of people who follow the European League said to me when they appointed him, because there was a massive hoo-ha when they sacked Gary O'Neill, wasn't there? I mean, it was like they'd just broken all laws of football when they sacked him, and it turns out that maybe they made the right decision. A few people said to me, he is a damn good coach. And then after the first 10 games, I'm like, you sure it's the right man? But actually, it does seem to be the right man. They seem to be playing more comfortable football. And every time I saw him on Match of the Day, he always seemed composed, even though they were getting twatted and, copping it from all angles. He was like, no, we're okay. And yeah, so fair play to them. They didn't boot the manager out. They've kind of gone against sort of traditional Premier League rules and kept their manager in place. And it's helped them. Hopefully it doesn't help them on Saturday, though.
Yeah, well, if we praise Luton for the way that they're consistent, then you have to give it to other people when they do it as well, because the normal thing would be, and I thought as well, that they'd sack him the way they did it for O'Neill, which was looking like a silly mistake at the time. But they've turned a corner hugely. I think the one thing from watching the Manchester United game, Luton are not going to give up gifts like they did, or play in the way that Manchester United did. They haven't done this entire season, so I don't know why they'd start now, but you have to give Bournemouth credit. Their high press really worked, but there was so much space between their defence and their midfield when they were doing so. And Luton just aren't going to do that. They're not going to play it around the back and give those opportunities, because we've got the option to go a bit more direct, and probably a good way to bypass that. And so I don't think they'll have the similar sort of joy that they did at Old Trafford. So then it becomes a tight and cagier game, because you're almost stylistically playing quite similar.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, Man United haven't got a midfield anyway, have they? I mean, that much is obvious. Without Casemiro, I think it was Amrabat and McTominay who played in centre of midfield. I am not being funny, but I would take the midfield that played for us against Man City on the same weekend, Nakamba and Barkley. I'd take them two over the two of Man United every single day of the week. So you're right about that. And like you say, we can go back to front quite easily, whether it's Eli up front or Carlton Morris. We'll come on to that shortly, but let's pick out some threats in the opposition. I guess the one good thing that Rob Edwards, he's saying that he's had sleepless nights. He ain't going to have to waste too much time over the chief threat for Bournemouth. It's Dominic Solanke. Scored goals in both seasons in the Premier League. He scored a mountain of goals in that season. They got promoted from the Championship under Scott Parker, and if you're scoring goals under him, you're doing something right. Came from Liverpool, didn't he? He was a big money signing. There was a lot of sort of fuss around him when he come through Liverpool system. It took him a little while to get going, but he seems to have hit form now. 8 goals for the season, including the opener at Old Trafford. I think he hit the post at Old Trafford as well. Whoever is in the centre of our defence, and we hope to dear God it's Tommy Lockyer, has got to keep very close eye on him.
Yeah, he's another one that I sort of had pegged as a good championship striker, but maybe not cut in the Premier League, and he's starting to prove that wrong. But I mean, it's taken him a while to really acclimatise, a season in the Premier League, and then having this one, and now in this good run that they're in. But previously where he might need a couple of chances, or it seemed like he might need a couple of chances to score a goal. Now, if you give him a chance, he'll take it. It seems to be it's one of those where you hope that would happen to your striker if they're in a not particularly good run of form, but they get one and then there's confidence. And the similar way that it's happened to Elijah the last couple of games, similar way it happened to Jacob Brown when he scored 2 in 2. Obviously, they've not got up to the levels of Solanke at the moment, but you can see how it happens. And he is a danger. He's quite quick, which obviously Tom Lockyer going to have to monitor that one, but he's done well against pace largely, by and large, so far, which is owes, I guess, a lot to defensive nous and positioning. But he's good. He seemed to be good with his feet. He always seemed a decent build-up player, and the final piece was just the goal that was always missing, and now that's coming. So, yeah, he is a danger. He's probably one of the informed strikers in the league at the moment.
Which means, of course, he won't be considered for England under Gareth Southgate. Yeah, no, he is good. He's been in my fantasy team, actually, since the start of the season. Obviously, you've got to get some cheap players in there, haven't you, if you go for Haaland and Salah, and he seemed as good as anyone. Have the day off on Saturday, though. I'm more than happy for my fantasy team to score nil points this weekend, rather than you fill your boots on Saturday, Mr. Solanke. That much is fine. Then you have to kind of not search for threats, because they've got quite a few threats, but most of them we've come up against in the past, though. I mean, you look at Semenyo, we come up against him when he played for Bristol City. Didn't really think much to him there, actually. Good, like you say, good championship player. Seems to have kicked on this season. Thankfully, he'll be missing for the Africa Cup of Nations if we can start reeling them in a month's time. And then you've got, a couple of other players. Patrick Kluivert's son. I mean, Jesus Christ. If that doesn't make you feel old, what does?
Yeah, I know.
Patrick, I mean, we mentioned about Euro 96, didn't we, a couple of podcasts ago when we reflected on the death of Terry Venables. Patrick Kluivert was the forefront of that Netherlands side. Now his son is playing Premier League football. I mean, Jesus Lord. Potential of Max Aaron's playing. He was injured on Saturday, but obviously he's got former Luton connections. Really, really sort of big talent, but hasn't really fulfilled that. But I think the two that we're going to pick out come in the midfield. You're a fan of Lewis Cook, aren't you, in the centre of the park? He had a good game at Old Trafford.
He did. Everything seemed to run through him, and he led the press very well from all the footage I could see. Yeah, he's always been touted as a very, very useful footballer. I think this is probably the case for the lot of the Bournemouth, because they've all got good quality, but never really fulfilled it, certainly in that season where they went up and came back down again. But then I guess the way they played in the Championship to get promoted is a benefit to that. And not saying for 1 second that we want that to happen to Luton, but there's a silver lining if at the end of it that is the case. But yeah, very useful player, keeps the ball very well, can pick a pass, and yeah, he's one that Luton have got to watch out for sure.
He is, but I mean, thankfully we've had good preparation, haven't we? Declan Rice and Rodri are probably sort of upmarket levels of that particular player in a side, so it's not like we've not had good preparation for dealing with Lewis Cook. You're right, he's a good footballer. I've heard him touted about being on the fringes of an England squad, but I mean, to be fair, 300 odd players are on the fringes of an England squad, aren't they? That's the talent that we're picking from at the minute. The other one, we'll go back to FootMob. I think the highest rated player on that site with regards to Bournemouth is Marcus Tavernier, who again we come up against in the Championship 2 years ago when he was at Middlesbrough. And again, I know he scored the goal at Kenilworth Road, or at least I think he scored the goal at Kenilworth Road. But you know, he's another one. I mean, Chris Wilder was manager there, Super Chris Wilder. Again, you just looked at him as a good Championship player. You didn't think of anything more. But now he seems to be thriving kind of wide out for a Bournemouth side that, yeah, he's got the most assists for this season.
Yeah, and you've got to give him his dues. That's what people are saying about Luton, though, isn't it? They've got a lot of good Championship players, and then you've got to make the step up, and you know, at the moment he is, and there's a lot of Luton players that we can see that's happening. The results aren't coming yet, whereas for Bournemouth they are. I remember him being fairly quick, but yeah, it is surprising, but it just shows you what you can do, really. Because I'm with you, really. I just thought, yeah, decent Championship player, and maybe even at the start of this season, you were looking at him going, oh yeah, there's a handful of them there that are really good in there, but they're not quite making the grade now, and they are now. I think you know, I've read some interviews from the players after the games at the weekend, and they're saying the reason for it is, you know, they were trying to get used to the style of the manager, and that's right, I suppose. He is playing a different style to the way they did with O'Neill. You did wonder whether there might have been a bit of unrest because of that, and maybe that was playing its part. But you know, he's got them playing in a very effective way. You've got to play to the strengths that you've got, in the same way as Luton have, and at the minute they're sort of showing Luton the way of how to do it, really. And there's a lot to be admire. There's a lot to admire about what they're doing at the moment. And you know, if he's the man, if Tavernier is the man that's up there with all the assists, then he's doing something right as well. As a man you've got to pay attention to. Yep.
A side that's got Philip Billing on the bench. I mean, whenever I've watched Bournemouth against us in the past, he's always been the one that stood out like a sore thumb. If he's only on the bench, I suppose you really do have to give him some credit.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been one of the better players that when we've seen him. Very deceptively strong, isn't he? Because he's quite slight but very rangy, I guess. Yeah, I mean, he scored at the weekend, but yeah, if he's not getting on the pitch, then obviously they've strengthened, they've improved, and so yeah, it's going to be a really difficult challenge. Like I say, I think that, you know, given this game midway through the games that have already happened, we'd have fancied it a lot more. I would have, definitely, but it's one that you're going to have to be wary of. Certainly, like we said, they play on the counter. They've scored just as many set pieces as Luton this season, 7. Although their aerial duels haven't won nearly as much as Luton. Luton are up there as second in the league after Everton. So there's definitely a route there to where Luton can get some joy, particularly if we're saying they like to press high and we can go a bit more direct, and that works. The question then, I guess, is the the formation and the lineup and who we go with, but there's some options there.
Let's go on to that then. The formation, who we line up with. Obviously, there's no Marvelous Nakamba. We'll come on to the midfield in a minute, but we do have Issa Kabore back. Again, I stress we're recording this prior to Rob Edwards' press conference that we can get this out to you. So you've got plenty of time to digest it before the game. We know Issa Kabore back. Are you expecting Issa Kabore for Ryan Giles an automatic switch? And Alfie Doughty back to the left-hand side?
Yeah, I think so. Just because that's... Rob said that Alfie doesn't mind playing on either side, but I think from watching it, his best side is clearly the left side, and he goes back over there, I think. And Issa's only come out because of being ineligible, and I think he had a really good game against Arsenal. So I think, I think he comes back in. Is the pace element as well, isn't it? So far, I think Giles is unproven, I guess. He had a decent game against Man City without really pulling up any trees and didn't really get the chance to run at anyone. That's no disgrace to him because he didn't get a lot of the ball. So I would see that as the option coming in, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. The two sort of question marks, so obviously we know Marvelous is out. I think we're all expecting Sambi Lokonga to start the game. Maybe Pelly to come on if indeed Sambi can't do the whole game, which would be understandable, particularly if it gets a bit frenetic, as it's got the potential to do. So the question marks then, ahead of, as I say, preempting Rob's press conference, the question marks is whether Gabe Osho's fit and whether Chio Ogbene's fit. Let's go on the assumption that Gabe Osho is fit. Does he just replace Amari Bell?
I mean, if you ask social media in the last couple of days, then I think that the answer would be yes. But
I think Amari Bell's been killed off, hasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was harsh, as we said in the Manchester City review pod, that yes, it makes a mistake for their winner, but there's a hell of a lot of opportunities to cut that out and prevent the goal. I don't think you can pin it all on Amari Bell, particularly. So that is a really tough one. Do you know what? I think I would, because Gabe, he played fantastically well in the couple of games before.
Well, also, you've just mentioned this game could come down to set pieces. Who's just nodded corker of a header in from a set piece? Osho, and they don't actually send Bell forward for set pieces, do they? Bell's the one that hangs around on the halfway line. So that in itself would suggest that if we're going to target set pieces and away from home, you've got to. It would be an automatic thing. Forget what they do defensively. At some point, you're going to have to be offensive. And Osho's just a better threat in the box than Amari Bell. That's not criticising anyone or praising anyone undue. It's just how it is.
Yeah, he's also better with the ball at his feet as well. So if you do get the option to play out, then he is better there. I would imagine he's quicker. I think, I think he's quicker. I don't have the stats to look at it, but I think so. And when you're looking at trying to stop the likes of Solanke, maybe you need that as well. So the more I talk about it, the more we think about it, I would say Osho comes back in.
Yeah, Rob didn't seem too sort of downhearted when he spoke about Osho after the Man City game, did he? So that would suggest that he's going to be available unless there's a setback in training in the week leading up to it. The one that no one really mentioned was Chio Ogbene. If he's fit, though, does he get in? Now, this is a stupid thing to say, right? Because the first 10 games, he's probably the player of the season. However, he's not going to get in ahead of Townsend, you wouldn't think, on the road. You want someone who's going to control the ball and the pace of the game. Therefore, he would have to get in ahead of Jacob Brown, presumably. So does he get in ahead of Jacob Brown? Because Jacob Brown's last 2 or 3 performances have been very, very good.
They have, particularly against City. Brown was outstanding first half, especially, I thought. Yeah, it is a really tricky one, that, because obviously he's a major threat. He's a huge talent and a major weapon in Luton's ability to particularly play on the counter, which you would imagine they would have to. But I wasn't surprised that he was omitted from the City game. That's because when he was playing, he wasn't himself. He wasn't. as effective. He was obviously carrying something and feeling it. We knew that anyway because he went away to international duty and couldn't get his foot in a boot. And I asked before the City game, is Chio even able to train? And they said, well, it's hit and miss really. But I understand he doesn't train a lot at the moment because he can't. So whether that sort of effect shaves a couple of percentages of his effectiveness, we are talking about like minute things and minute additions or subtractions which can get you or lose your result, and maybe that means he doesn't. If he's sort of fully recovered, then obviously you want him in. You want, if a fully fit Gio's going to be on the pitch, of course, but if he's been carrying it since the international break, which was mid-November, you would suspect that might be a longer term niggle that he's going to have to overcome, and maybe it's too soon. It feels like that would be the case. I don't know the prognosis. I've not seen any of his medical data. Not that anybody would, obviously, but I'm not saying it from a medical standpoint. Just like from a gut feeling perspective.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. The sporting term that you was looking for is the 1%ers, isn't it? That's what they all call these days. Thanks to that Team Sky cycling boss. I guess he'd, even if he's not fit to start, Gio, it'd be wonderful to have him on the bench, wouldn't it? I don't think there's a massive drop off right now. It's with Jacob Brown starting and then Gio coming off the bench. I would imagine Brown would not necessarily struggle to do 90 minutes, but he's just done 90 minutes against Manchester City, and then chasing around again. At some point he's going to have to be managed, particularly as after this Bournemouth game we've got another 3 in 7 days as well. So maybe that might be a reason why Gio is on the bench, but it'd be a good option if we need someone for the last 20 minutes or whatever it is, whenever he's regularly changed the front 3 only after about 65 minutes. So if we've got Gio there, that would be handy. The big one, Elijah or Carlton through the middle.
I have to stay consistent and say that Elijah's been fantastic for 2 games, and Morris, when he's come on, hasn't made the impact that Adebayo has made when he was coming off the bench. So I think for that reason, he starts, and you would imagine it'd be one up front, wouldn't you? The challenge then is to perform well for him, because it's not necessarily his best position. I mean, Morris usually plays that one up top role a bit more effectively, but he does seem like he's really got the bit between his teeth at the moment. And height wise, if we're talking the aerial duels, Luton are, almost a third. They won a third more than Bournemouth almost this season, and they're up there second behind Everton. If you're going to go direct, then maybe he's your man. I think he can hold the ball up well, and I think when he's confident, Eli, you really see a difference. And I think, how can he not be at the moment?
It's a harsh man, isn't it, that would drop Elijah Adebayo, having scored against the champions and the champions-elect in the last 2 games.
Absolutely.
We're only going to know if he can do the job away from home. By giving him the job away from home. Yeah, exactly that. And again, Carlton will get his chance. We've got 3 games in 6 or 7 days. Newcastle, Chelsea at home, Sheffield United away. There's no way that we're playing the same 11 in those 3 games. The intensity, certainly of the 2 home games, is going to be incredible. So, Carlton's chance will come. Carlton, even if Carlton's on the bench on Saturday, his chance will come, because good old Eli, he runs his ass off for 70 minutes. He actually played the whole 90, didn't he, on Sunday? But usually after 70 minutes, it's a switch over, as it was the other way around. Carlton run his ass off for 70 minutes, and then on comes Eli for the last 20. So Carlton will get his chance. When it comes, he's got to find the back of the net to put that question mark back in, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think it's one of the least worrying areas of the pitch at the moment for Luton, because all of them have scored so far. Morris has not scored for a while, and that may be contributing to him being moved out of the starting lineup for now. But they all have, and largely when they come on, they do a decent job, as Brown is showing right now. So the options that Edwards has got, it's a headache, I guess, because he's got to pick the right one, but he's not picking necessarily out of form too much. You could say Morris is maybe slightly out of form, but we've praised what he does off the ball, and without scoring in previous podcasts. So there is that work that he does as well. So that goes unnoticed a little bit, but all of them are, doing really well, and they've acclimatized quite well to the Premier League.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, I'm with you. I've no real, it's not like one is considerably better or worse than the other. You just play the horse for the course, don't you? And and right now, Eli's, he's in the kind of form that, strikers are confidence beasts, aren't they? And Eli's got the confidence, and maybe Morris just needs one to hit his ass, much like we said that Eli did earlier on. He didn't hit his ass, did it, to kick Eli into gear? He got that goal against Forest, and he's been fantastic since then. But
and arguably, there's that great stat that he's had 4 shots on target and scored 4 times, but he's also had more chances than Morris. I think you can look at the Tottenham one, for instance, that he didn't score, which he should have, but Morris hasn't had those really. So he's doing something right as well to get in those positions. So, I think you've just got to play him in the form he's in. When he really fancies it, I think he's a handful. And also, he's got this unpredictable element as well that I think everybody says, I'm not sure he knows what he's doing half the time. And that's a nightmare for defenders as well.
Absolutely, yeah. No doubt about it. Carlton will come good. There's absolutely no doubt about that.
Yeah, no doubt about
a fired up Carlton coming off the bench, yeah, I'm all in for that. It's not a problem whatsoever. So that's how we see it. We see Issa coming back at right wing back. We see Doughty moving to the left. If we have Osho available, we'll be picking him and Sambi Lukonga to replace Marv in the centre of the park. That's a decent enough 11. So how do we hurt this Bournemouth side? Well, we hurt this Bournemouth side. The first way we hurt this Bournemouth side is set pieces. Nobody conceded more set piece goals in the Premier League than them last season. Admittedly, that was under Gary O'Neill / Scott Parker for the whole of the season. There isn't really anyone in that defence that wasn't there last season, though, and indeed the goalkeeper. So you wouldn't have thought, it's not like they've signed, a couple of giants to shore that up. You've just mentioned already that they've conceded 7 goals from set pieces this season. A lot of Luton's play come through set pieces with the quality of Alfie Doughty. So if we can get some free kicks around the box and some corners, you look at the way we just scored 2 corners against Arsenal, scored from a cross against Manchester City. That is an automatic way in.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's one of Luton's main options and weapons, particularly with the form of Alfie Doughty at the moment. He's still way up there for assists and meaningful crosses, isn't he? Townsend showed what he could do at the weekend, given just one chance, and that's the Premier League experience, I suppose. So, and if it comes down to, keeping it tight, as has been the case at on away days, and then countering, you might not get that many opportunities. So you're going to need those players to get the ball in the box, whether it's set piece or crossing from open play, and then that's another good shout for Eli, isn't it? Because he's 4 shots, 4 goals.
Yeah, get in front of the goalkeeper again. Hope he flaps at it and nod it in again. Yeah,
I'm guessing they don't count that one against Tottenham as a shot.
It wasn't really, was it?
It came off his arse, didn't it?
Well, it didn't go anywhere either, did it? It just stayed there. It was very, very weird. But yeah, that's definitely one way in. The other way in, I would suggest, is down their right hand side. Bournemouth's right back. It's kind of like the who's who of Luton Town, really, in the past, isn't it? They've had Jack Stacey there for so long. He's obviously moved on to Norwich, and the guy who was at Norwich from Luton Town, Max Aarons, has replaced him, only he's been injured recently. So it looks like, unless Aarons is fit, and I don't know the details of his injury, but if you're going to miss Old Trafford, you probably are injured, aren't you, really? It looks like Adam Smith will be down that side. Well, he's been playing all across that defence when we played against them in the Championship. Never really looked like anything special. So whoever's on the left wing, whether it be Chio, whether it be Brown, or whether he pulls an absolute rabbit out of the hat and goes with Giles down there, whoever it is, I would imagine is going to see quite a bit of the ball.
I think so. A lot of it's come down from the left anyway. When Luton have attacked, haven't they? It's a good area with players with pace and confidence and a delivery to match. So yeah, it's if that's the matchup, then I think if whoever the matchup, to be fair, I think that would be a route.
The other route, of course, we wax lyrical about him all the time, but if Ross Barkley's roasting Rodri, Phil Foden, Bernardo Silva, Mateo Kovacic, as good as Lewis Cook is, Ryan Christie, Patrick Kluivert's son, and whoever else they want in that midfield, you would imagine Ross Barkley's got their number.
You've got to say yes. He seems to have everyone's at the moment. You know, he was the best player on the park against Arsenal. And yeah, that moment for the goal and a couple of others, the shot he had that just went wide against City showed his quality, what he can do against world-class players. And even though they're in an absolutely stunning vein of form, Bournemouth and Cook as well, and we highlighted him, I think he's a really good player. You know, a Barkley in full flight is a threat to anyone.
Yep, he most definitely is. Hopefully he can control that game, certainly in the middle of the park, and we can get some joy there. There's a few Bournemouth injuries that are significant, not least Alex Scott, because every time he's played against us with Bristol City, he has looked a serious class act. It's not the one who does Football Focus. It's actually the player who used to play for Bristol City, and he's out injured. I think he's got a long-term injury, hasn't he? I can't remember which game it was recently, but he went off in one of the home games. It might have been Aston Villa at home. I think he's done for a long time, which is a shame, actually, because they were talking about him, yet again, being another one that's on the fringes of the England squad. So it's kind of helpful that he's not around, because every single time we played Bristol City at Ashton Gate, that bloke turned into peak Lionel Messi, and it was just like, he was becoming a bit of a pain in the arse. We thought we'd got away from him when we got promoted, and then they've gone and signed him, and now we're in the same division as him again.
Yeah, I really like that guy. He is a class act, and one player that I would have loved Luton to sign, but I think the price...
Didn't they sign him for 25 million or
the
something?
price tag was a bit prohibitive, so there's no go there. But yeah, he was fantastic at Bristol City. He was their man, wasn't he? The star man. So yeah, I'm delighted if he's not playing. I wish him well, but not. I don't want him to be playing at the weekend.
Yeah, no, it's down on some of the sort of websites as a knee injury. I'm pretty sure it was a serious one. I don't expect to see him. I guess one other person that deserves a little bit of merit, actually, given what he's gone through, who was on their bench on Saturday, David Brooks. Mm-hmm. Anyone that cancer hits and who comes back, recovers from it. I mean, we only know that with our own legend, Mick Harford. Anyone who survives any form of cancer and comes out the other side of it, whether you're in our team or the opposition team, you deserve football fans' respect. So full credit to him for that.
Absolutely. Football's just a game at the end of the day, isn't it? And he's, life's more important, health's more important. So to be back in the swing of things after that is, credit to anyone that's had to go through that thing. It's, it's an awful disease and time to, to battle against it and everything. It's awful, particularly at a young age. So yeah, full credit to him. I don't know if he's been playing recently though, has he?
He's on the bench on Saturday, and I've seen him come on a couple of times, and I'm pretty sure he played the same Wales game that Tom Lockyer played in the last international break. So he's there or thereabouts, but obviously if you want to stay on the bench on Saturday, because you are actually a pretty decent player, that would be mightily helpful for us. That is us covering the game. But when we sent James out to do the post-match interviews after the Man City game, he cheekily added a few questions in on what the players were expecting ahead of this game. Here's the thoughts of Marvelous Nakamba, Elijah Adebayo, and Jacob Brown, and they've all got one similar thing, and that's taken the performances of the last game very much into this one.
Bournemouth are fantastic. They've had a fantastic run of games and results. But again, we then have to go there and play our game and take our game to them and see how they cope with it. It's going to be, again, tough. There's no easy games in this league. And we just got to make sure that we're on top of them and we try and put our game towards them, and then we'll see where we come out in the end.
Is the challenge now to take what you've been doing at home and on the road?
Yeah, definitely. We know that here is tough. We then got to take what we bring here to the away games and make sure that we're that same level of intensity, that chaotic football that we just spoke about is the same away from home as it is at home. And if we can do that for large amounts of the games, we'll get our moments, and it's about taking their moments and essentially taking the points. What's the most important thing to stay in this league? You need points, and the gaffer wanted us to try and get something out of these two games that were coming up. We knew it was going to be tough, but again, like you said, we came so close, so close. So if that doesn't give you confidence, then I don't know what will.
But obviously Bournemouth are in a good place at the minute. But we're confident with our performances, so hopefully we can keep that up and get a result. If you look at Bournemouth, how quickly they've started to move up the table, it only takes a couple of games. So we're not worried about that. We just keep working, and I think you just got to trust the process, and the points will come.
We just have to believe it, to focus on ourselves as a club. Bournemouth away also to be a tough one. We just have to compete and go there and hopefully to get some positive result.
As I said in the last podcast, we do apologise for the background noise there. The mixed zone at Kenilworth Road. Kenilworth Road's not fit out for a mixed zone. And, you know, people are charging all around that corridor, left, right and centre. So we apologise for the background noise, but we're confident that you heard what you needed to hear in relation to what the boys thought ahead of this game. They've got it right though, haven't they? Play like we did against Arsenal, play like we did against Manchester City, and there are points in this game for us. As good as Bournemouth have been, they're not Arsenal, they're not Manchester City.
There's got to be points everywhere if you play like that. And you're going to be disappointed and gutted about the way the games went, particularly the Arsenal one. It was sickener. But in the cold light of day, we had a little time to think of it, slept on it, done a bit of debrief and worked on it. The way that they've performed in those games was beyond anything I could have expected, I think. And if they can take that into any other game, then they've got a shot. And
the encouraging thing of both of those games is Rob Edwards had a game plan against the best teams in the world, and it worked. For the 96 minutes that the game against Arsenal should have been played for, it worked almost perfectly. And against Manchester City, bar for the first 15 minutes, it worked absolutely perfectly. If we cut out the soft goals and we play on the ball to the levels that we did, there are definitely points coming. That is for sure, unless Bournemouth have actually turned into Manchester City, and I'm pretty sure that they haven't. They've just had a friendlier run of fixtures than what Luton have had recently.
Yeah, let's hope. I mean, if you're coming up against a form team, it's tricky. And this division has shown us how ruthless it can be. So it's not one to take lightly at all. I'm not saying it's going to be an easy task in the slightest, particularly at their ground. You know, it's tight, smallest ground in the Premier League. So, it is going to be a massive challenge. Absolutely.
It is. But hopefully it's one that we can come out on top in.
Okay, those of you who are watching us on video, you will see that the set has changed. So we need you to use your imagination skills and pretend that the set is behind us. This is because we'll hold our hands up. We fucked up. We forgot to do the score predictions, James.
We did, didn't we?
We did, and it's all on me, that one. I completely forgot to do it, but we're not going to go into one of the biggest games of the season and not give you guys a score prediction. So we're on Zoom. As I say, pretend that the background's behind us. If you're listening to this on audio, you've got absolutely nothing to worry about. Nothing has changed as far as you're concerned. It's just those watching on YouTube. So, James, we've gone through this game, Bournemouth away. We've covered that it's pretty much must win. Therefore, does your score prediction involve Luton winning the game?
Yes, it does. I've been debating about whether to go for a draw and sit on the fence, get some splinters, but I think those performances against Arsenal and Man City warrant something, and it'll be an upset, I think, because Bournemouth are the form team other than Liverpool in the league, like we said. So it will be an upset, but I think they've got to start putting things out of the bag now. So I'm going to go for a 2-1.
We needn't have bothered recording these after all, then, because that's exactly the that's exactly the score that I was going to go with as well. You know, Luton's only away wins, both wins so far this season have been 2-1, haven't they? Probably going to be a common theme when Luton win, because clean sheets are few and far between at the minute. If Marvelous were playing, perhaps I might lean towards a little bit of a clean sheet, because we would then be able to have more men around Dominic Solanke, who we've already identified as the main threat in this Bournemouth side. The fact that he isn't playing might mean that Luton have to go after some goals with Sambi in the game. That's highly likely. So yeah, I mean, we won 2-1 at Everton. We've won 2-1 at home to Crystal Palace. We'll complete the grand sweep of 2-1 wins. Our third win of the season can be 2-1. They're the score predictions. If you are watching on YouTube, abracadabra, we're about to go back to the main set.
That is it for this episode of the podcast. If you are one of the 1,200 or so that are going down to the game, obviously there are fewer of us in this game than there are normally. Tickets were very, very hard to come by. Be loud, be proud. The boys really, really need all of your support for what's still going to be a tough game, even though it isn't an Arsenal or a Manchester City. As I say, that is it for this episode of the podcast. Thanks very much for watching or listening, however you've consumed this podcast. Christmas is coming. If you're still looking for a little present to buy someone, Trust membership is £10 per season or £5 for concessions. The more members we have, the more important it makes things like this podcast, and the bigger our say can be in the wider football thing that we've covered on this podcast and indeed all across our website and everything else over the last 12, 18 months and more. So we'd be very much appreciative if you'd like to sign a friend or a family member up to the podcast. In line with Christmas coming, podcasts are going to be coming thick and fast. They will be slightly different around the time of the Newcastle and Sheffield United game. That is just the way the schedule falls. I'm not recording podcasts for you guys on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. I apologise, but I'm just not. So we will do something slightly different. Please do subscribe to wherever you get the podcast. As soon as something drops, you'll get a notification. You won't miss anything out, but we will still bring content with regards to both Newcastle and Sheffield United. It will just be in slightly different form, as we'll explain when we do the Newcastle United preview next week. The next podcast will be the Bournemouth review, which will be out normal time next week, where we're hopefully reviewing a Luton Town victory. My thanks to James for joining me for this preview episode. To you for watching or listening, we hope you've enjoyed it. To the Hightown Club for staging us once again. To Sean Grant and the Wolfgang for our intro, which is still fantastic, even though we're 40-odd episodes into the podcast for this season. To Ed Smith Creative for all the designs that you see on our sets. And, well, there's only one thing to say, isn't there? Massive game. Come on, you Atters.
Can you believe it? We are Premier League! Yes!
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got these massive souls.
We're Luton people, and that's what we care about.